UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Nascimento has just taken place over the weekend, and in this video I'll be giving you my best matchups to make for all the top fighters on the card, kicking it off with Chase Hooper. Now, I think it would be great to see Chase Hooper fight Paddy Pimblett, especially looking at the grappling exchanges that they would have. And Chase Hooper is definitely, if he is having performances like he did against Borshev, completely destroying him, then he's definitely going to be making that name for himself. And I think, I honestly think it would be great, especially with those grappling exchanges between them. But I think since UFC 300, it's just been more and more evident for Paddy Pimblett that it's going to be Renato Moicano. They've both agreed to actually fighting already, and it's looking more likely that it's going to be for UFC 304 in Manchester, which in all fairness is a much bigger fight and is a very good test for Paddy Pimblett in this stage in his career, as the UFC is definitely being more careful with him due to the money that he can bring in, especially on that UK side. He's definitely one of their biggest stars it's definitely in the lightweight division. And honestly, it's probably the smartest move for Paddy as well, to fight someone like Moicano that doesn't have that real strong knockout power and that's very good on the ground. And Paddy Pimblett's a second-degree black belt, so it's definitely a test for him on the ground, a test for Moicano on the ground as well. So I do understand that matchup, but I don't think Chase Hooper is far off a matchup like that, to be honest, especially if he is putting on these performances like he did on the fight night. And I think that Chase just needs a little bit more work. If he can consistently get performances like that, then he'll be there in no time. But he needs a little bit more work to getting into that ranked fight. And I honestly think the best fight for him at this point in time is against Claudio Puelles. I honestly think that looking at their UFC careers especially, they have very similar records. Both Hooper and Puelles have very similar records. Hooper's 6-3 in the UFC and Puelles is 5-3 in the UFC. And Puelles he's fought and lost to pretty good opponents. So he lost to Ziam recently and he lost to Dan Hooker as well. And he has a fantastic ground game. I mean, he's basically like a Paddy Pimblett, but I mean, he's just a step behind. It's just that level before. And I think that's where Chase Hooper is at the moment. And I mean, they're both very good submission-wise. Both of them have the exact same submission record as well in the UFC. Well, actually, no, technically throughout their career is 7-0. They're both 7-0 in submissions throughout their careers. And yeah, ultimately, it'll be a very good chance for Chase Hooper to showcase his striking, and especially to test if Puelles has actually improved his striking or not. Because Puelles he's just so one-dimensional, and that honestly, he could get away with so many more wins if he just improves his striking. So I definitely think this is the matchup to make, especially on a stylistic point of view. And I think you book this for a fight night in late July. Moving on to Waldo Cortes-Acosta, I reckon you give him Tai Tuivasa. Now, Waldo probably didn't honestly gain many fans against Despain in his fight. Obviously, he was pretty much hugging him, crush-sniffing him the whole entire fight, which, in all honesty, is the smartest thing he could have done. Like, I'm honestly not really shitting on him at all. Like, it's the smartest thing he could have done. And he did take some pretty good shots from Despain as well. But, I mean, the fact that he is beating the biggest hype train outside the rankings in the heavyweight division and is also on a 3-fight win streak, and the only person he's lost to in his UFC career is Rogerio de Lima, who's in the rankings at the moment. So I definitely think when you look at Tai, who's on a losing skid at the moment, and I think just like Derrick Lewis, he needs to prove himself with a test below, literally as Derrick Lewis just did against Nascimento. I think Tai Tuivasa needs that test to keep himself in the rankings. And I think that this is a very good opportunity for Waldo Cortes-Acosta to rightfully get a shot at the rankings and for Tai to test himself against a boxer. It's good because, I mean, it's stylistically a fight that people are going to want to see, especially after Tai just lost to Marcin Tybura first round submission. I think it's definitely what people want. We want a boxing fight. We just want a swang and bang fight with Tai Tuivasa in it. And Waldo Cortes-Acosta has got the chin to make that fight very interesting as well. And he's much more of a, I think he's more of a volume striker than a power striker, but it'll be interesting to see if he can do what Cyril Gane did and tire Tai out, especially with body shots as well. Waldo Cortes-Acosta is, pretty decent with his boxing, so it'd be interesting to see if he can rip Tai's body to the point where he definitely reduces that power that Tai has, and then see where the fight goes from there. Or Tai just chins him in one round, who knows. But honestly, I think that is definitely the fight to make. And I mean, both of them they both have pretty similar timelines, and both of them didn't take too much damage in their fights. So I think you booked this one for a late July fight night. Moving on, Sean Woodson. Now, with Sean Woodson, this one's pretty clear and concise from what we got from the post-fight interview he had. You give him Bryce Mitchell. I think it's a great clash of styles, and firstly, Bryce Mitchell has already agreed to the fight, but being said, within the actual fight itself, great stylistic clash, tests Bryce Mitchell's stand-up, tests Woodson's ground game, and it's really going to be important to see, because Woodson is a problem on the feet, 100%. His boxing is one of the best in that division, I think, and it's really going to be good to see if his ground game is up to par against a traditional wrestler like Bryce Mitchell. And when you look at the fight in terms of the timeline, Bryce is coming off one of the most brutal KOs against Josh Emmett, which was in December at UFC 296. So if Bryce is smart, he'll take some more time off. And with Woodson, he's been very active this year. He's fought twice this year. He's fought 6 rounds worth. And I think that being said, it's good for them to both have that time off. And I think it's just perfect to make for a fight night around like mid to late September. And yeah, I just honestly think that is a fantastic matchup with that clash of styles, and to get a lot of answers out of both of them. Now, moving up to Diego Ferreira, I think you give him Drakkar Klose. Drakkar Klose is a good matchup. I think, especially with both of them being veterans. You got Ferreira's 39 years old. You've got Drakkar Klose, who's 36 years old. And when you pair them both together, you get the winner to have a crack at that top 15 position. They're both on good winning streak. Like, they've both got good momentum. And honestly, with them at that age and the performances that they're both put on, I think it is honestly deserved that they're getting up to that top 15 spot, or at least just like one fight behind to get back into that top 15. And yeah, it honestly, for them at that age and the performances they're putting on, it's very impressive, especially with Ferreira compared to Drakkar Klose. Drakkar Klose is a little bit of a stretch, but he's on a 4-fight win streak. So he's got that really good momentum there. And obviously Ferreira beating a hype train like Mateusz Rebecki, you have to give him a fight higher up. You have to give him something close to that top 15 spot. And honestly, if they keep that same pace, if they keep that same momentum as they've both done in their last fights, it's going to be an amazing fight. I think this is definitely a matchup to make, and I would put this on a fight night around mid-August. Moving up to Carlos Ulberg. Honestly, we had this issue in January. I honestly think that this is now a perfect opportunity now to make the Dom Reyes fight. They've already tried to make it in January. Ulberg he pulled out with some form of injury. They had a little bit of back and forth. They were giving each other a bit of shit. So there's a little bit of a storyline there, which is good. And when we're looking at the fight's rewards for both of them, a great fight to give Ulberg, as you've got Reyes, who is a top name in the division ever since he almost beat John Jones, and it's just a fantastic name to have on his resume, and it will definitely allow him to break into the top 10, and it gives Reyes that opportunity to derail a hype train, who is Carlos Ulberg, who is just tearing through a lot of people at the moment. And yeah, if Reyes can really derail that, I mean, he'll get so much respect back. And and honestly, Reyes needs some form of win to end that frustration, because it's just, ever since John Jones, it's been absolutely brutal for him. And yeah, honestly, if as much as I love Carlos Ulberg, and obviously, Australia, New Zealand, it's just the fact that if Reyes does get that win, you got to be happy. I've got to be happy for him, to be honest. But when we're looking at the timeline itself, like, Reyes hasn't fought in a year and a half. He's coming off a brutal KO loss against Ryan Spann. Ulberg also took no damage in his fight against Alonso Menifield. So I think you book this one not as far out. I think we put this on a late June or early July card. Possibly a fight night. I mean, you could even do it for UFC 304, but yeah, possibly a co-main event of a fight night, I reckon. Moving on to Alonso Menifield, I think you give him Azamat Murzakanov. Menifield has done pretty well to stay in between the 10 to 15 rank spot, and Azamat has been out for about a year, I think, and he withdrew from both his fights against Uzdemir and Khalil Roundtree. So he 100% needs to get back in there. The last fight he had that he actually won, that he had in general, was bloody Jacoby. That was about over a year ago. So yeah, I think that it's definitely important that this fight happens, especially since Ulberg has beaten Menifield, because Ulberg is going to be pushing both of them backwards, and they're both getting pushed very close to outside the top 15 at that point. So I think when you make this fight, the winner gets to stay and the loser has to fight a contender outside the top 15. And I think that is only fair, to be honest. I think at that point, with Azamat being inactive and Menifield losing brutally like that, I think the loser of this fight has to fight someone out of the rankings to have their rankings actually challenged for. I think that's only fair. And yeah, ultimately, I think you make this one for a late August. I think you make it for a late August fight night. Moving up to Nursulton Ruziboev. Honestly, I think it's his best option to go back up to middleweight. His power, I think, especially looking through his whole entire career, I think he is just honestly too tall, and his power does just not generate that well, and especially his speed just doesn't generate well, especially against someone that's as explosive as Buckley. And I think, yeah, his best opportunity to actually get on a streak and really get things going is back up to middleweight. I think he needs to go back there. Yeah, I think that power just generates much better with that extra weight on him. And yeah, I think with the middleweight fighters, he doesn't have such a speed disadvantage as well. And I honestly think when it comes to that, it'll be good to see him fight more of a submission-oriented fighter. And I think it would be best for him if he moves up to middleweight again, he fights Rodolfo Vieira. I think it'd be interesting because it's either going to go one of two ways. Both of them could either cancel out each other's ground games because they are both very highly skilled in their submission games and their grappling, or we could get a very interesting a puzzle fight where we see that on the ground where they're transitioning, sweeping. We're seeing a lot of that, which is always good to see. And ultimately, I think either way, it'll be good because if they cancel out, if both of their jiu-jitsu games cancel out, then they're going to be both stuck on the feet. So we're going to get a scrap on the feet then. So I think either way, we are winning in this fight because I don't think one will be super dominant over the other. And it'll be good because it'll be a good test for Rodolfo Vieira on the feet, which we haven't seen too much of because all the fighters that he has fought are not that great on the ground and he always gets them there. So I think the winner of this gets a top 15 shot in the middleweight division, and I think you book this one for a mid to late August fight night. I think, yeah, mid to late August fight night, probably maybe feature prelim or early on the main card. Moving up to Joaquin Buckley, give him Gilbert Burns, 100%. I mean, this is pretty much almost confirmed, probably at 90% confirmed. Gilbert Burns pretty much confirmed it on the Show Me the Money podcast that he's doing at the moment, and Joaquin Buckley pretty much called him out for it in his post-fight press conference segment.
But post-fight, he calls out our very own
Gilbert Burns. I think it's a beautiful fight. It's a beautiful matchup.
Gilbert, your response?
Let's do it. The way I see, like, I'm not in the situation to call anyone out or to pick and choose. Okay, I'm number, 6? I think 6 right now. I don't know. If they send me, I'll say yes. Not. I never said no to a fight. I'm not planning on start doing it.
It'll just be very good in terms of that. In terms of the welterweight division, it's a bit of a passing of the guard. As much as I love Gilbert Burns, I mean, he's, especially after that JDM fight, after that knee, he's just taken a lot of damage. I think after that first round of that Bilal Muhammad fight he had, where he did his shoulder or his arm, I'm not too sure which one it was. I think it's just from there, and his age as well. I mean, you can never count Gilbert out, but I think what he wants, I honestly think it's over. I don't think he will win a title by any means. I think the division's just moving too fast for him. But going to this actual matchup, I think it'll be an amazing matchup to really test Joaquin Buckley, because Gilbert Burns is still an amazing fighter, and their timelines do match up as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how Buckley actually deals with Gilbert Burns' ground game, because Gilbert is very, very, very good defensively. And when it comes to Joaquin Buckley, we know he loves to ground and pound. So it'll be very fascinating to see if Buckley can actually find a lot of success there. Whereas like Buckley, because Gilbert Burns and Nursulton are very, very different, like physicality. Like, they're very different statures. When Gilbert's on the ground, he's using a lot of movement transitions, trying to trap. Whereas Ruziboev is very much using his legs to create that distance and just push them off. So it'd be fascinating to see how Gilbert actually works his guard against Joaquin Buckley. And something that we just got to point out straight up is Joaquin Buckley is not getting Conor McGregor. Like, it's just like, I mean, it was an okay call out, but he's definitely not getting the Conor McGregor fight. And I just definitely don't think he's going to even be the backup for the International Fight Week fight with McGregor versus Chandler. I think that Charles would definitely be the backup for that fight if it's going to be anyone, to be honest. Because especially if you've got the Charles and Chandler rematch, and then you've got Charles's Muay Thai striking against Conor's kickboxing style striking, that bladed stance striking, which will be very fascinating on the feet. And there's so many interesting factors to Charles versus Conor McGregor. I mean, you get to see Charles at a bigger weight, and also you get to see Conor McGregor did get a black belt. Can we see if he can actually do anything against Charles? Absolutely, probably not. But I mean, who knows? I mean, he did get a black belt, so we'll wait and see, but I highly doubt it. But yeah, there's so many elements to that fight that would be so fascinating, which ultimately is my point, saying that Joaquin Buckley would not stand a chance against Charles Oliveira to get that backup fight. But when you're looking at this fight, Burns versus Buckley, I think you make this either a fight night headliner or at least a co-main for a fight night. So either a main event fight night or a co-main event fight night in September, or you can even put it on the UFC 307 card early on the main card. Moving up to Rodrigo Nascimento, I think you give him Mick Parkin. I think Parkin deserves a shot at the rankings. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He derailed the hype train of Muhammad Usman, and their timelines match up as well. Both of them aren't slow heavyweights by any means. So it'll definitely be good to see how Nascimento can test Parkin's ground game, and then see if Nascimento can keep up with Parkin on the feet, especially in a technical sense. Because Nascimento isn't slow, but does he have that boxing pedigree to keep up with Parkin? So it'll be a good, again, kind of like the Woodson versus Bryce Mitchell fight. It'll be a good clash of styles to see. And I think you book it for a fight night in late August. Moving up to the last fight on the card, Derrick Lewis, give him Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Both of them are UFC veterans. They've never, surprisingly, they've never fought, which I had to look through. I had to look through both of their careers, and I was thinking they must have fought at some point, but no, they haven't. So it'll definitely be an interesting striking style matchup. And you've got Derrick Lewis, who's obviously got ridiculous KO power, and you've got Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who is definitely a quicker striker, but I would say has better striking than Nascimento. So it'd be more interesting on the feet than the fight we've just had. And it'll be good to see if Lewis can then actually utilize the ground game he was talking about that he was going to use against Nascimento, which he almost did catch a trip in that first round. So, you got to give it to him. At least he was trying for it. But I think with this fight, I think the winner of Lewis versus Rozenstruik, I think the winner gets a top 10 opponent. And because you've got Rozenstruik, who's just coming off a pretty good win against Shamal Gaziev. He won that fight extremely convincingly, and Derrick Lewis has obviously just put on an absolute show and owned the whole entire fight night that we've just had. So yeah, winner definitely gets a top 10 opponent. Book it on a fight night in early August. If you've enjoyed the video and you want to see more MMA-based content, please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.